Abolade, and I am the Executive Director for Peace Education and Practice Network, PEPNET Worldwide, and PEPNET Nigeria at the moment. Today we'll be looking at peace education, a tool for conflict transformation and development of Africa. So I believe with the topic itself, you already know that this is a peace building class or a peace building lecture that is meant to do some certain things we'll be looking at very soon. So first, this particular lecture or class will be looking at the following objectives. I believe that after the end of this presentation, participants should be able to define what is peace education. I also expect that participants after this presentation should be able to describe in concrete terms what conflict context, what is the conflict context in Africa. When we are looking at African conflicts, we're looking at different contexts now. We'll be sharing that. And I will also, after the end of this session, I want participants to also realize how peace education can be a means for conflicts and social transformation. So first, let me introduce some keywords that you might need to know, especially in the aspect of peace education to you, and we will dive straight into the content generally. So I know we are familiar with the word education. Education comes from the word educare, which means to draw or to lead. That means before you engage in education, you must be careful. You must know yourself. You must understand yourself. You must be able to lead people and to draw people's attention to you. You must be able to influence. That is what that means. So peace itself is from the Latin word paz, which means pais, or French, or peace, which can be traced back to the Roman goddess for peace. There are several explanations to that, but that is not for this particular session. We might be doing justice to the intricacies of the etymology of those words later. So we're looking at peace education itself. Peace education is seen as a participatory, holistic process that includes teaching for and about democracy and human rights, non-violence, social and economic justice, gender equality, environmental sustainability, disarmament, traditional peace practices, international law, and human security. So there are several concepts rumpled into this explanation of peace education. However, I won't want it to be staggered by the words or the phrases. They are just saying that there is a need for you to understand this skill set so that it will help you transform into identifying these other concepts that were mentioned, like justice, gender equality, like that. Okay, so let's look at definition of peace education according to James Smith. James Smith is a renowned scholar who defines peace education as the process of acquiring value, knowledge, attitudes, skills, and behavior to live in harmony with oneself and others and the natural environment. In essence, what James is saying is that we must pay attention to if our value system, a particular value system, a particular knowledge content, a particular attitude framework or skill set or behavior that a skill set, attitude that help us change in particular, our attitude, our behaviors, to live in harmony with oneself. Now, you must start with yourself. You must understand how to deal with yourself before you transfer it to other people. And this is very necessary. This is very important. Um, what you don't have, you cannot give. And that is why peace education is holistic. It deals with self first before dealing with others. And when you're able to deal with others, then you can change the natural environment. So when you are dealing with all this, you must put in consideration the planet itself. When I mean planet, I'm talking about plant, animal. So it's not just you alone that is living in this world. You must take cognizance of issues that has to do with climate, that has to do with environment, that has to do with different form of security. So other definitions that you might find useful: peace education is a participatory holistic process that includes teaching for and about conflict prevention and management themes such as nonviolence. Nonviolence itself, let me just, I'll be breaking them down one after the other because we might not have time to come back to this. So nonviolence itself is a process of being harmless to any object or anything. It was from an India origin, non-violent, which is ahimsa. Ahimsa is a theory or a concept from Hindu, which is not to be harmful in any way to anything. And it's so serious by the Hindu, um, and we know that Mahatma Gandhi is the father of nonviolence. That means there is that sense of there is no violence, and there is this sense that there should be no harm. You must not do harm to anything. Even insects, they are so strict as that. So we have reduction of bias, which we know that peace education helps to reduce bias in a way that there are several pattern for violence we know, and most of the latent stage of conflict starts with bias when people begin to see that we are different from the other. So peace education content must deal with all these things. It must deal with prejudice, and when we are talking about bias, bias can come from economic, it can come from ethnicity, it can come from ageism, it can even come from what we call lookism. Lookism is when you look at people and you profile them and you set some bias already without even thinking of their competence or the ability to do things. So when we are looking at peace education with this definition, we're also considering social and economic justice. Social and economic justice. When I talk about social and economic justice, there should not be too much gap between the rich and the poor. That's what this is saying. And there should be equality and equality for all humans. This is a big one because even with the United Nations um, goal, the SDGs, you know that goal 5, goal 10, and even goal 16 also touch about, we know goal 5 to be gender equality. We know goal 10 to be reduced inequalities. Um, and even 11 about reducing economic and social inequalities among communities. It's important that these are taken into consideration. And goal 16 also emphasizes the importance of peace, justice, and strong institutions. Then this definition also talk about disarmament. Disarmament is important because we have people who are already affected by violence, and we must be sure that we disarm them. We also reintegrate them back to the society. Also, when we look at traditional peace practices, peace education must touch on traditional peace practices that are acceptable. Some should have evolved. You know, there are some cultures that doesn't really support some of these things we mentioned, especially issues around gerontocracy, around gender-based violence, around girl child mutilation, and other practices like that. peace education should cover all those, and it must be able to protect all parties involved. So, looking at some major conflicts in Africa, I'll just touch five for the sake of this presentation. We know we have numerous, and conflict itself is something that we'll be discussing possibly maybe on another platform, or maybe if there is another session, hopefully. Now, conflict itself, we know that conflict is not a negative term, but conflict can be in two different ways. It might be constructive and it might be destructive. And conflict itself is the contradiction that exists between parties based on interest, based on needs, based on relationship, and based on their positions. And it also affects the relationship and the context of dealing among those parties. So that is just another introduction for you to have an idea of what I want to talk about now, which is which are some of the conflict situations in Africa. Now, for many of us who are aware of what's going on in Ethiopia, we know that the Ethiopian government and the Tigray region have been in conflict in recent times, not even now. It has started long before 2012, but in 2021, it resurfaced again because of the intention of the president of Ethiopia to postpone an election which doesn't favor the Tigray region because of the COVID-19 as an excuse. We know that that is still ongoing. A lot of people are dead already. And there has been a lot of reportage that there has been a suppression of the local community. I mean, the media not to take active role in exposing the number of casualty and the realities on ground. But that's a major conflict we are facing in Africa. And funnily, most parts of the world are not even aware about the conflict, and a lot of people are dying by the day. While attention is being placed with the Ukraine and other conflicts, many Africans are not even aware of what's going on in Ethiopia. So we know of the civil war in Cameroon between the please pardon me. I would like to just manage the noise from behind. I hope that doesn't distort. Okay, so as I was saying, we are talking about some major conflicts in Africa, and I've explained what happened in Ethiopia. The same, we have similar issues ongoing with some parts of Cameroon, where we have the southern Cameroon and the government. We know that there is a Anglophone part and there are Francophone part of the of Cameroon that are in conflict presently, and the same thing is also more of a secessionist angle of that kind of conflict, where a particular group of people are willing to secede, and the other government, the bigger government, are in disagreement with them. We'll be looking at those nature later. So in Nigeria, where some of us are, I'm also talking as a Nigerian and from Nigeria presently, and I can tell you that it is evident that we are having violent conflict through terrorism, banditry, and secessionist agitations in Nigeria. We can see different groups, different secessionist groups like Boko Haram, Father Heather clashes, IPOB, MASO. They are really causing a lot of damage. However, to many people, they are freedom fighters, and they are also they also have reasons why they are doing what they are doing. So we know we have the Democratic Republic of Congo, we have the terrorism going on in Mozambique. And there are other countries like that we know that there are pockets of violence either during their election, like Kenya just have a recent election. We hope that it doesn't um, escalate violence or it goes free and fair. I mean, the result and other things. But let's move straight to what are the natures of this conflict in Africa? Now, all these conflicts, I intentionally pick those major ones so that we can have a clear understanding of the context of African conflict. African conflict in our case, we're looking at identity crisis. Most of these issues is about who are you? Was we are these people, they are we are different from them, and that has really caused a lot of problem. And that also linked to ethnic prejudice, though that's also on the list. But identity crisis goes beyond uh, it can be seen in a form of racial relations when we are looking at it from the global perspective. But when we come down to the um, African context, is more of ethnicity, where a tribe feel marginalized and they feel that no, we need to do our thing ourselves and we need to secede. And the other group feel that is a threat to their sovereignty or a threat to um, more of like a treasonable thing to want to succeed. And the question will be, why is the other groups, why are they so not interested in giving people, the people that feel that they can be a country, dialogue with them and, manage themselves. So we also have issues of passive injustice, as I've said. Like if you check the Nigerian secessionist movement, you discover, especially the one from the southeast, um, it is more of a passive injustice. They feel like they have been deprived one way or the other by the resources in their zone or in their region, and they feel like most of them can still trace back to the Civil War and discover that they have been shortchanged. There's that perception that they have been shortchanged, and that is some of the natures or the nature of conflict in Africa. You can see it in different engagement, different conflicts across the globe. Because of time, let me just run through all the other nature. We have relative deprivation. Resource control is important before I don't want to leave that, because if you look at most of the conflict, is either there is a gold or there is oil or there is something people are grabbing for. There is scarce resources and people want to control it. Like the situation of Nigeria, we know what's going on in the southeast and how they feel like this resources is from our backyard, but we are not enjoying it because it's for everybody. And controlling their resources has been a major conflict cause. The same thing with the Niger Delta militancy that we have during Jonathan's time and other different countries. And the same thing you see in Congo, you see in Ethiopia, you see people struggle for resources. So there's no conflict. Most times, most of the conflict in Africa is based on resources. It might now have religious coloration, it might have ethnic coloration, it might have political and power struggle. But is it that some people are relatively deprived and there is a particular thing they are fighting for, which is resources, the control of power, the control of wealth. So I think I've been able to touch on the natures by that explanation. So conflict transformation process, as we can see, uh, this is the process of prioritizing, addressing the underlying conditions which give rise to conflict situation while putting in place strategic structures for sustainable peace. Sorry about the error. It should be sustainable peace. Now, when we're looking at conflict transformation process, unlike other procedures, either under conflict resolution, conflict management, uh, this is looking at how we can address the underlying conditions. These are root causes. We are not just dealing with the proximate or the triggering causes. We're looking deep into the root causes of this violence. And while looking at these root causes, it's important that we pay attention to how we can sustainably place some structures. When we are looking at conflict transformation processes, we are looking at how can we set structure that in the next 20, the next 30 years, in the next 50 years, peace will be sustained relatively. And under conflict transformation process, it is a means of engaging with and transforming the relationships, interest, discusses, which are issues, and legal framework, which is constitution of a society. So when we are looking at conflict transformation process, we are particular that the people involved will be addressed. When we address the relationship that exists between these people, we look at their power analysis, we understand the power framework, we can, then we understand what interests these parties, then we deal with the issue, and from dealing with the issue, we set up a legal framework that, especially in a country like Nigeria, where uh, there's a perception and it is known that the people, most people are not believe that the constitution have a ripple effect in our development. However, when you develop the people will develop, you know, their interests. You are able to, the people will transform the issues and they will create a legal framework that will build a structure. And this is what conflict transformation process is all about. Now, one of our, we, which we call him the father of peace studies across the globe. Is one of them is Joan Gatton, and he propounded a particular conflict transformation transit method that is important. But that is not for this discussion because of time. I will just move straight to the one that we might need to use. But those steps is also dealing with actors, looking at issues, looking at legal structures and structural transformation that I'll be looking at under Rupert Singh conflict transformation theory. Now, four things are important in this. Four things. The first one, we are looking at the actors. Now, when we're looking at the actors, we are paying attention to internal changes in attitudes and behavior of conflicting parties. How do you do that? We major content that transform people will come through peace education, which education of conflicting parties on conflict management strategies. When you teach people that, okay, instead of you going to court, you can actually discuss these things. You can actually use a CACOS system. You can actually use mediation. You can actually improve your risk analysis ideas, and you can do a lot of things. Then you teach them, you have a training for them. And before you know it, they get transformed and they begin to also transform other people in their space. Then they will now go ahead to do what is called issue transformation. The actors will now alter the agenda of the conflict issues. So when we educate people with the knowledge of peace, we are expecting them to determine or transform the issues they are dealing with personally to deal with other people and to change the society. And from there, we go straight into the rules. And so when everybody, like this is very good for a country like Nigeria, like countries like even Kenya and other places, they are having issues. Uh, like Liberia and other countries that are planning and working towards an election. So the first thing is, if we can get in the right people who can internally change the attitude and behavior of conflicting parties, because there's a whole lot of conflict going on in those places. If we can select good actors who can help with the leadership, who can also propel peace engagement among Nigerians, among Liberians, among different people in Africa, then those people will alter the issues of injustice, the issues of insecurity. Before you know it, people will begin to alter those issues and change them for better. Then before we realize, people will have there will have been a room for constitutional change in totality, constitutions or laws that benefit the people and is not for a particular party. When I talk about party here, I'm talking about the people involved. So when we are dealing with a law or a legal transformation, the people that would benefit or that will be punished by that law must be totally involved. And in a space that we don't have that done, then there is a problem. So the last one is when we do all that systematically, the structure begins to change. The entire structure of relationships and power distribution in the conflict begin to transform. And then you have conflict transformation. However, we have different theories, either for or against the conflict transformation theory. We have different school of thought aside from this, and you can check them out. That's not for this introductory lecture or class. So why is peace education important to conflict transformation processes? One is the first step in transforming other components of conflict transformation. Now, before people will know, they will know by particular content. Before people take action, they will know what they want to take action on. Before people make some decisions, you are going to influence those decisions. And it's important that we pay attention to these details. So when you develop a peace education framework, like what we are doing at Peace Education and Practice Network, it helps transform conflict from a destructive mode or model to a constructive one. Conflict is not a bad thing in itself. It depends on how it's being managed. Presently, there is a conflict coming in Nigeria. It's already at the latent stage and it's building up, possibly very soon. The election itself is a conflicting issue. It's a conflict because there are contradictory interests, there are contradictory needs, there are contradictory relationships, and even power relations. Now, how do we transform that from a destructive mode to a constructive one? Is one, by educating people on how to vote right, how to behave properly, and the importance of choosing the right leader. However, in a democratic contest, there might be several issues as regards that, because the majority, if they are not well enlightened, they might also choose the wrong actors to lead them right in that conflict transformation process. So it's important that people are well educated with peace understanding, and peace is also not in isolation of its good governance system. So it's also important that we know that peace education is important to conflict transformation processes, because prevention, they say, is better than cure. We know that over 9 million people are displaced in the northeastern Nigeria. Sorry, over 900,000 persons were displaced there. Children alone, children and youth are displaced there. And we know the cost implication. More than 1,400 schools have been closed in those places. Those are expensive realities. Now, if we have taken our time to have educated the potential perpetrators of those evil, it will have been with the knowledge of peace education, how to be peaceful with themselves, like 50 years ago. By now, we will not be dealing with post-conflict preventive measures, post-conflict peace building measures, rather. So peace education itself, if properly done with proper strategies, it will help us save lives, it will help us save time, it will help us save money and other invaluable resources in the long term. So it's important we pay attention to peace education because it's important. So what can you do to start the conflict transformation plan for your country? No matter where you are listening to me or where you're saying this, it's important for you to start something. So the first stage is you must gain knowledge of peace education through books, through trainings, through other relevant resources. Like what we do at Peace Education and Practice Network, where we have we have an institute too for peace building and peace education. It's about you getting the knowledge first. be equipped, we have capacity, there are skills to learning. And if you remember the definition the other time, we're dealing with skills, we're dealing with values, we're dealing with knowledge to transform your behavior, to transform your attitude, to make you be able to reason properly, to address life situation. So you can start by getting knowledge. The first step is for you to seek knowledge, get knowledge, and from there you can be able to also teach others. However, if you're finding it difficult, you can also join a peace education organization like Peace Education and Practice Network and other platforms like the 3D African program, and all this will help you have capacity. If you have a capacity, then you can transform all this into creating content too. That is, if you are well equipped, you can also create content. 3D Africa Youth Organization, what they're doing now, you can also do same in your own space, because we need more advocates for peace building. The same way people are strategically positioning themselves for violence, we must also be strategic and be dynamic, innovative, and creative about our approaches for peace education. So you must be ready to create content, teach it, and manage peace programs, not content, peace programs. So you can join organizations to do that as a volunteer. You can join different platforms to ensure that this is done. And when you are doing that, before you know it, you're already in the process of making peace and also transforming your world, yourself, other people, and the rest of the globe. So peace education, conflict transformation, and African development. Know that most conflicts in Africa can be managed if they are addressed using conflict transformation tools like peace education, conflict management, peer-to-peer mediation, different things. And you need to get experts to get you on track. Now, if you are paying attention to this, we will not be paying so badly. We will not be paying with our nose and with our sweat now, with blood and tears right now. So peace education and education help humans become more just, more secure, and developed. So if we have put education in the pipeline, most people who are committing this crime will presently be just, will be more secure, we know what's going on right now. They are not rocket science. They did not start today. We did not just check the indicators, monitor them, and use education to track them down some years ago. So we are suffering. They are not God-made, they are human-made, because we did not take necessary actions as a people to educate other people, to become self-reliant, to become more just, more secure, and develop, which will automatically reflect in their socio-economic growth. So this is a quote. While developing this, I said, feed the people, they will feed the world. When you educate the people, they will transform and preserve the planet. Instead of you trying to feed different things, value people, train them, transform them, educate them. And that's important when you do education first. When people are transformed, it will relieve you of all the other point of the shade, the in transformation process down. You won't be the one fixing the planet. People will do it when you educate them. So that's a quote from me. So in case you want to do something, and I really want you to take these active exercises to identify an inter-group conflict in your either your community, a group maybe at workplace, your organization, identify one, give it a name, give it a scope, describe the conflict transformation processes that I've mentioned now. You know them, you know the conflict transformation processes. Let me just give you hints. You are dealing with actors, you are dealing with issues, we are dealing with rules, and we are dealing with the structure. So you look at it and describe it in your own conflict context, which is the scope you've identified. Then you reflect on the best ways to resolve or manage the conflict situation using the conflict transformation processes spectrum. Though we have not gotten deep into that, but I know you can from one or two things I've said, you can look at it, just reflect, jot them down, just reflect and write them down and see what are the things you think might resolve this particular conflict. How will it have been better? Do you think the issues should come first? Do you think the actors should be treated first? Do you think the structure can be changed without the actors? Do the arrangement, do the context analysis, do all form of understanding, and I'm sure that you will get it well. Thank you very much. In case you have any question, you can reach me on different platforms. Um, and you can also reach me through 3D Africa Youth Organization and my own personal email, which is abolady, ABOLADAY @gmail.com. You can message me there if you have a question. We can treat it there and find another time to share. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this moment, and I hope